all possible worlds. It rained on August 9th. The heavy grey skies wept over the great grey city, and frequent showers chilled the August day. But the rain did nothing at all to quench the giddy exuberance of the vast throngs gathered to watch King Edward and Queen Alexandra make their triumphal progress at last to Westminster Abbey. The people had waited a long time for this day, and they did not intend to let a few showers spoil their celebration. And while the ceremonies were shorn of the glitter and glamour of foreign heads of state, most of whom had already gone home, the great day was still perfectly splendid. Better, many said, because it was a family event rather than an imperial gala. Thousands of British prelates, princes and peers gathered to witness the crowning, while hundreds of thousands of British citizens noisily thronged the streets and filled windows along the route of the parade. At 11:15 in the morning, Edward and Alexandra were passing up St. James Street and through Trafalgar Square, their crystal and gilt coach drawn by 8 superbly matched cream-coloured horses, preceded by an escort of the Royal Horse Guards. The crowd in the square roared when the coach came into sight, followed by ranks of glittering cavalry and foot soldiers, a broad stream of scarlet and gold flowing through the wet grey streets. It was a demonstration of the Empire's military prowess, perhaps designed to ease the sting of the recent military disgrace in South Africa, where England's finest had been hard put to it to suppress a rabble of 60,000 Boer farmers. But that humiliation was forgotten now. The people had come to see and to cheer the King and Queen, and cheer they did, at the tops of their lungs and with all their hearts. Jack London, an American writer recently arrived in England, joined the throng. He couldn't see much except for the backs of the double line of soldiers walling off the line of march, but between their shoulders he saw the gold coach bearing a man and a woman, both in the regal splendour of coronation robes.
"God blimey, what a splendid old chap!"
exclaimed a ragged, dirty man leaning on a stick. He dug his elbow blithely into Jack's ribs and blew his beery breath into Jack's face.
"Ain't he a rum un, eh? As fine a king as ever wore crown is what I says. Too bad his old mum kept him waiting so long to put it on his head."
"And there be his queen," sighed the woman on Jack's right, whose tattered grey shawl did nothing to shield her dishevelled hair against the spitting rain. "A rare beauty, and her pushing 60, if you'd believe it." She heaved a gusty sigh. "Wished I had a few of her diamonds to put in me hair. I'd glitter, I would." Jack London, gloomily calculating that just one of the Queen's glittering jewels could provide enough to feed the 1 million subjects who would receive poor law relief on that day, shook his head in disgust as the royal coach clattered past. He had never witnessed such mumbo-jumbo tomfoolery, he would write later, except maybe in a Yankee circus. He shoved his chapped hands into the pockets of his ragged coat, lowered his capped head against the rain, and made off through the crowd. Nearer Westminster, another group of spectators enjoyed a somewhat wider view. Bradford Marsden, his pretty wife Edith, and a dozen guests watched the procession from a high window, sipping champagne and eating fresh oysters. They applauded the crimson and gold tide, the ponies prancing, the drums drumming, the bugles bugling, all in a cacophonous celebration of wealth and power. The coronation, Marsden reflected with immense satisfaction, was an inspiring statement of the Empire's indisputable authority and undeniable magnificence. Long might the Empire endure and prosper, and long might Bradford Marsden prosper with it. He smiled as he thought that the vantage point his guests were enjoying with such careless gaiety would have put 100 guineas a head into his pocket, had he been as hard up for a bit of ready as he'd been in the past, when he'd had to pawn his mother's emeralds, for instance. But time and tide had changed for the better, and Marsden was feeling happily flush. His family property and wealth, like that of many of the aristocracy, had vanished in the national decline of agricultural income, and Bradford, the last scion of the family branch, had been forced to fend for himself. Like other young aristocrats, Charles Rolls, for instance, the younger son of Lord Langattock, was selling expensive motor cars, and Sir Harley Dalrymple Hay, a baronet, was built